So because we covered so much in such a little amount of time, I wanted to go through and show you guys another example of this. So I'm going to use Andantino as the example and then fill it all out straight on the PDF here. Now you don't have to fill out everything, but you know, you should know your name. Title and composer. Composer doesn't matter if you're in the Suzuki book. It will matter later. So, tempo. What is the tempo of Andantino? It doesn't say there, but it's actually in the name of the piece. So, Andantino is around andante. So we're talking, you know, 90s. But all right. The key. Got the key signature, 1 sharp, so it is G major. Time signature. It's a C with a line through it, that is cut time. Just write cut. All right. Now, this is where you can kind of use it as a checklist. So the rhythms, you look through, is there any weird rhythms? Maybe not. All right. There's no weird pitches or shifts or anything crazy. So you can't really, you know, answer any of those. Same with mood. Dynamics, those are written in. We got mezzo forte, crescendos, decrescendos, same thing. We actually have a lot of symbols. Same with articulations. Staccato everywhere. We've got cesura, grand pause, ritenuto, meno mosso. We got tons of things written in for expression. All right, the form for this one, we're going to call this an AABA. You're going to hear that a lot. It's pretty common from this era up through jazz. And I'm simplifying that a bit, but this is the same as this, and that whole second line is the same as this whole last line. The third line's different material. It's got a different style to it. It's not staccato. If that's something you don't grasp immediately, write it in. Legato. Okay, so for form, we could write in AABA. We're not dealing with accompaniment yet. Technique, that would be, in this case, maybe your staccato's not great, or your crescendos and decrescendos aren't great. Bow direction, that's just keeping track of it. If you don't know, your gold standard should be if you could look at a measure and just go, yeah, it starts on a down bow. And if you were to add any slurs or any of that, that could be part of those bow directions as well. There's nothing wrong with writing in everything. Okay. I'm going to give a little playthrough just to kind of check it out, because I want to make sure I have the right tempo. Ba da da ba da da ba da da da. Heck, to check that, I'll just play it with the metronome. Now, if in this case there's written in, we've got 2 of them, if you're playing with a metronome to work on your rhythm, you can't do those. What I noticed, it feels a little fast to me, but it's also probably because it's almost 10 at night. I didn't like my dynamics weren't the best. I kind of just got randomly louder here. So this is where I could use this as a checklist and just say, all right, whether or not artistically choosing a mood or anything like that, I want to make sure, make sure on dynamics. This is kind of a vague answer, but it'll get me started. Same with articulations. Work on staccato parts. I just didn't like how they sounded. All right, moods. I'm going to say, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to say it's jaunty. To me, that's a good word. I'm like, andantino should sound jaunty. You can come up with it, your own words. Bouncy, sea shanty, I don't know. Whatever word or words helps you just know. My rhythm, it was fine. I just felt, it was more about the dynamics and the articulations more than the rhythm. My pitch, it was okay. Maybe a couple pitchy things. My intonation is sorry, when I said pitch, I mean, I put my fingers down at the right time. My intonation, that might be something I want to check with a drone or tuner. Again, that's really vague. Let's say more like measures 9 and 10. That's nice and specific and good. And that way I'll just put on my tuner and I'll check my finger spacing. Play that a couple times, then move on. Tone. Because it's a big, I thought my general tone was okay. I felt it might have been a bit scratchy, so clearer staccato. Or even just big, bold tone is something else. That's something that would kind of help me remember, around the jaunty. Maybe I'll add that in. Form still the same, pitch, rhythm, all that. The technique, not too much. There's, technique and bow direction, that's fine. My notes might be, feels a little fast at tempo. Get comfortable with that. Which means just play it with a metronome at speed. So yeah, that's really all you kind of need to get started on this. Now, if at any point when you're doing this, if you disagree with what's written, most of you, we went through the example of Twinkle Twinkle. It's a little weird to hear Twinkle Twinkle as ba, 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 ba. It's too brash. It's a lullaby. If you disagree with the dynamics, the tempo, or the mood, then you want to go back through, and I would start at mood. Say you wanted to play this sad. At which point, you might say, well, I actually don't want it jaunty. I want it sad. Well, if it's sad, to get it to sound sadder, now you have to start asking, okay, what would I do with the rhythm or the pitch? Those are the same. That'll be more for jazz students. Intonation, that doesn't really change. Dynamics, yes, it does. In fact, that will affect all these below. So these are more checks. These get a little more integrated into each other. So tone, in that case, I might say all legato. And then, well, geez, dynamics. I gotta start piano. For a couple students, the more advanced ones, when we were talking about vibrato, again, there's no symbol in classical music, but we're gonna steal something from guitar music, which is just this kind of squiggly line. Think like you're drawing waves. And it might look a little weird, but again, the goal is to look at this in 6 months and know exactly what you were working on, what you were trying to get to sound right. How this would affect it is if you're like, oh, if I want vibrato on all the half notes, well, you're going to have to start shifting, which is fine, but then you're going to have to go back and think, all right, where am I shifting? How is that going to affect it? Then it might be for pitch, practice shift in measure 4, where we're maybe da, 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 da. We don't want to shift for just one note. This one gets a little tricky because we don't want to go to 5th position either. Second would probably work. Ba, da, da, da. So maybe 4-3 and then go 4-2. I just did that math wrong. That would be 4th position. That'd be a little bit nicer. 3-1. And right in the position. And then test it. This should all be tested. Gosh, I do not like that shift. Well, let's see. I don't like to shift for just one note, but if we did second and then the pinky finger, it is this final note, that might be a little bit better. Now, that's probably a little bit further away than we'd normally go because now I'm dealing in slurring and more vibrato, really shifting around. I started in 2nd position there. 1, 2, 4, and then I shifted down. Like now I got to rewrite all those shifts, which is fine. But then you got to look back at the sheet and see, okay, if I'm doing that, how does that suddenly your pitch and intonation are going to be much more important to get those proper shifts and the proper vibrato. And that's how you should use the sheet. You kind of got to look at both. Go back and forth after you answer the basic ones. Just work your way through. It should be that even though some might say it's a little heavy-handed in the writing of it, I should be able to just hand this to anyone else and they could know exactly how you played it and they could come pretty darn close to sounding like your version. That's the goal. Again, as I said in the homework and during lessons, do as many as you can. If it's 1, if it's I don't expect anyone to get through book 1. Get as far as you can. If it's 5, whatever. If you can't answer all of these, that's okay. If you can answer most of them, like technique, we didn't answer that as much. We're not dealing with as much that's a personal thing if you're holding your bow wrong. Same with bow direction. We didn't talk about that much. Maybe you just need to write it all in. But there's everything. get started on that, and then we'll start going through them, figuring out what notes we can, and get it so you know these pieces like the back of your hand. See you next week.